Well, hello everyone. Welcome to day 5 of Rainbow Secure Symposium 2021. I would like to take this opportunity to welcoming our guests, speakers and worthy audience. I would request Shreya to give a quick introduction of our first guest speaker, Priya Pandya.
Thank you, ma'am, for allowing me to introduce our speakers today. Greetings to all and happy Navratras to those in India. Our first speaker of the day is Priya Pandey. She is a cybersecurity consultant with 7 plus years of experience in cloud security, data privacy, third party security management, regulatory compliance, and shadow IT framework implementation. Ma'am, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Shreya. I'm very glad that you said very positive words. I'm very happy and thanks for the opportunity that I have got this to present about the my experience on third-party risk management and the SaaS adoption. Um, just like Shreya mentioned, I would like to just talk about my experience. So I've got around 7 years of experience. I work as one of the managers in one of the big four consulting firm in Hong Kong. I have experience in cloud advisory, third party security assessments, data privacy and protection, as well as the regulatory compliance. I've got few certification across the cloud service providers like the Azure Security Engineer, Azure Fundamentals, and multiple of them. And then also from the perspective of the identity best practices. So I have got the experience in ISO 27001 and also the BSI GDPR. So let's go to our agenda for today. Uh, I would like to cover the topic like third party dependencies because how exactly the third parties are the key, they have become the key part of our lives and how it's been adopted across the organization and how do we actually manage them. But these two topic, I think we have spoke a lot and we have been hearing a lot of people talking about the same parts. But the key thing which I wanted to talk is also on the third party adoption going towards SaaS. And just from the my observation and my understanding, how can we do a we can take as small steps for ourselves as a professionals, as an employee of a company, to make sure that we are mindful on doing these while utilizing these SaaS applications. So let's jump to the third party. So, what is actually a third party? So, there are, depending on the organization, I think around 40 to 60% people are trying to outsource the type of work. It's because the every day there's a new requirement coming up in the market, and nowadays, like even if it is a marketing campaign, there are users who are trying to go to a third party application to do this like surveys and get the result back, and there is some other party which is posting those, like Instagram is influencing and yeah, hiring their influencers, and then they have lots of big ecosystem apart from the traditional ones like we used to see, like the software developer, which is still there. We have third party specifically for delivery management and everything, but the key risk always remain the same, right? So as long every day whenever there's a new technology coming up, the dependency on the third party is also increasing, and so as the risk. So what are those key risks? They are operational risk, legal and regulatory risk, financial and reputation risk, and cybersecurity risk. So let me just go down one bit by bit. Operational risk could be the normally when we have any shutdown. Suppose if there is a we have a dependency on, suppose in this type of scenario, we can see that we were dependent on AME. And what if the AME doesn't work? So it's just like, is there if there is any application or if there is any external service provider which has a dependency on the businesses and it stops, so it impacts us in a way that there is no business continuity. then there are lots of legal and regulatory requirements coming up every day. So if you see, if regionally, if I'm in Hong Kong, so I have my own local regulator which I need to follow the requirements, irrespective of the even if you are compliant in terms of the you have got certifications, but you have to meet the requirements of the local regulatory requirements. So the very well known is GDPR as well, because GDPR have because of the GDPR, the privacy control have also become very stringent, and there are companies which are definitely trying to adopt those requirements, because the third risk we're going to talk about is the financial risk. Now, if you talk about the financial risk and reputation risk, we see that there every day there are lots of data breaches. It comes in a picture around 80 to 90 breaches are being originated somewhere to the end from the supply chain, and it leads to the key owner. Actually, even if you are outsourcing the data, you are trying to provide the information to third party and make them understand that how exactly the work is done, but at the end organization is still the owner, right? So in that case, if there is any impact to your data, the organizations are being impacted financially, because there are regulations which have to pay the penalties, or they'll be penalized if there is any breach, as well as since the system is not working, it ends up losing of some businesses. At the end, there are lots of issues with the reputation, because the moment uh, Facebook or Instagram comes in news with a data breach, people start thinking a lot that is it safe or not, even if they were not thinking before. So there's a lots of implication on reputation as well. And cybersecurity risk is normal, the risk which in terms of the cyber attacks which is happening around, and how do we make sure that this platform is is a in a safe hands. Moving on, let's talk about the key challenges. So, if you see this is something which I've found on the TPRM survey, and we noted that it's around 84%. There are third party which host the critical and sensitive information. So that means 84% the third party might have the risk of breaching the data, and the impact goes to the third and the organization. As well as there are 29% of company who doesn't have any visibility on the security of their own third party partners, and 51% of the data breach actually occurs because of the third party. And in the recent time, if you see, you might have heard about Marriott, Instagram, Facebook, but of course the supply chain SolarWinds, which have become the key topic from the beginning of this year. So this have been one of the key reason why we think that third party management is important. And let's talk about how exactly we can go, make sure that those particular third parties are managed well. And so, talking about normally, traditionally, how do we actually manage these application is, first of all, we need to identify that there are clear ownership is involved in the third parties. So the owner, the organization is aware that what is their responsibility, and also what is the vendor responsibility. At the same time, we need to have a strong contractual data point, so that we can tell the third parties that, or the involved fourth parties that they how exactly these protocol has to be established, so that whenever there is any issue occurs and you are not you can always go and talk about that what was shared and what was discussed. As well as, it's very important that we have ensure right to audit in the contract, so that you have right to go back to the business and talk about the key reasons that why you want to audit. And most important thing, which I've realized that most of the companies might not have in place already, is the pre-onboarding due diligence. It shouldn't be like when you have signed the contract, the people started working, and then you think, oh, I think I missed something. But it shouldn't be in that case. You should be always looking at the part that, if this is a third party I'm looking for, is it good enough to adopt my framework, or is it adopt good enough to take care of my data? So this is the key in terms of establishing the clear ownership. And when it comes to the third party management framework, the second one, it is the very key that from the organization perspective, we have a firm wide established framework. And the reason why we need to do that is because we need to understand, if suppose if it's a big company, it has like 50 to 60 third party vendors. Every third party vendor has its own functionalities, and every third party vendor might have a different criticality than what it is expected from some other vendors. Like, there is one vendor who is actually responsible for only the payment gateway, but the other one is responsible for delivery. So here the responsibility to manage the risk at the payment gateway is higher than the criticality which we see for the delivery, because delivery we can always think from the part of the professionals background check. Also, if they have any records being delivered, so if the address is written, then how exactly they are taking track of it, if the application is being used, whether it is patched on time. So these are the basic for the delivery. But what about the payment provider? We should be looking at their security policies, whether they are PCI certified, or we should be looking at whether they are resilient enough, because they shouldn't be impact on the business. So taking this into the consideration, we need to understand that which category will go to which particular vendors, and based on that we should be doing the third party criticality assessments. And it's not just that we do the assessment and we are good to go, and then rest of the contract or next 10 years I'm not going to look at it. That's not possible, because every day there's a new threat coming up, there's a new breaches news comes in the picture. As well as, when you do the assessment, it is based on the extent current offering. So if you're trying to extend the offering, if you're trying to expand some new piece of work, you should be doing it again. The last one which I wanted to talk about was more on the vendor offboarding risk management process. Well, I will be talking about in the next slide as well, but this is majorly to talk about that, whenever you end your contract, you should be looking from the part that you have enough understanding when you do the offboarding. So you delete those data, you are able to remove that particular personal data, and it's not been misused. So let's go to the next slide, and we will be talking about the typical how exactly the process occurs in TPSM. Basically, we start with risk initiation, which is like we understand what are the risk involved for each of the vendors. Then we also look at the risk analysis. So when it comes to the risk analysis, the key part is always that end-to-end data flow. So there can be a chance that data originate from the organization, the key organization, then it goes to one party, and then it might goes to the fourth party, and then it goes back to again to the organization. So we need to identify where all the risks are there, where we can think that this can be breached or this can be misused. And these kind of analysis can be done in risk analysis phase. And based on that, you can go to the next phase, which is risk assessment using the best practices at 27001 NIST, and also some of the local requirements so that you can comply to them. Also the privacy requirements so that you can make sure that you are not penalized if those particular requirements are not in place. So it's not just that you just do the assessment and give the finding to the vendors, and then you say that okay, now you can work for me. It shouldn't be like the case. You should be always identify if it is a high risk vendor, if it is having a high risk posture. How do we identify and close those particular gaps, and make sure that once those are closed, then we can go ahead and start doing the work, because the overall impact is definitely going to come to the organization. So we should be looking on that part as well. And at the end, it's a continuous risk monitoring process. So there might be a chance that if it is a low risk vendor which doesn't handle lots of your personal data, not a lot of critical data, or not of having any direct impact to your business, you can do once in 2 years or 3 years. But if it is a high risk vendor, like a application developer, you need to look from the part that where can be the gaps can be, and you can have your own frequency at least once in a year. And let's talk about the basic baselines that we should be looking at. I mean, if it is a very low risk vendor, because we can't go to the detail that for each vendor how it looks, but at least at the minimum, we should be looking at their operational resilience, that business continuity management. Do they have a proper risk management in place? Do they do any background check for the employees who will be deployed to this project? And whether they are aware about the assets which are involved in doing this organization work. Because if there is any data breach or anything happens, then you can always track down and identify which assets are being used and which assets have been compromised. So it's like you are aware your where your data systems are, and that's very key. Data protection, because we should be looking at if it is a employee or a third external professional. He might have access to your the data, and you might be having any rigorous, very robust uh, policies in place at your workstation or on your organization. You're not allowing people to go to any site, you're not allowing any collaboration tool, etc., etc. But if it is a third party or fourth party involved and they don't have those kind of control to manage your data, that means at the end the data might be breached. So we should be looking at that part as well. And of course, people is very important in cybersecurity, information security, right? We need to look from the information security part as well, because they should be aware that what are the implication if there is any data loss, and what are the implication on the confidential data, how can we handle them, and how do we ensure that they are handled appropriately as per as per the organization policies. So this is all from how exactly the normal third party security management occurs. But since in the beginning I mentioned about the SaaS and how exactly it's been coming up, so we'll be talking about what are the key categories which in the recent time, in this last 1 to 2 years, have picked up. First one is the cloud-based storage service and hosting provider. Second is online payment and credit card processing, and the third one is JavaScript on the websites. Right. So the let's talk about the first one. And the reason why we want to talk about is because these particular categories coming up day by day. And the reason is that the SaaS have become so easy for the people that is just one click away and you can get subscription. So there are lots of third-party application which are being purchased by users without the knowledge about without the knowledge about these particular requirements, and that actually tends to a shadow IT. And where when shadow IT is a time when the IT system or your key IT administrator is not aware about where exactly your data is being stored, and they have no governance about it. So about 97% of the cloud application are used in enterprise as a shadow IT, as per the latest Netscope results. So let's talk about what are the key drivers. So in the recent time, when you see that the we had gone to a remote working arrangement, we all not going to the office so often. We are just being at home, and then doing multiple level of work at one time. And you want something that this is picking up, and you want to understand that, oh, this is something which I can start working on. And then that's one of the reason. Of course, the second reason is the faster procurement process, because normally if you see the traditional organizations, we might have a very, I mean, most of the people might agree to that we have very long process to get the approval for one single application. And why don't a person just go and just click and get the subscription? So it's easy for them to go and adopt those particular applications, as well as the latest trends in innovating application, helping them to do the work faster than expected. So if they don't have anything which is helping them to work on it, they will definitely go for something which is much innovative and they can utilize it. So this is leading to shadow IT application and leading to the SaaS adoptions as well. But can we stop them now? I mean, it's not a time that we can't just say that stop using all the SaaS application, please use this particular application which is approved application, and the one which we are not approving, then it should be cancelled. But then you can't actually do that if the people are actually in the remote access. You can have some controls in place, but you can't just stop them to use all of the SaaS application. But of course we can train them and make them understand that when we are actually um, considering those particular applications, so what are the key things that we should be looking at? Of course we should be looking at their data retention policy and privacy policies, so that the the user is aware that if there is certain number of critical data which they are uploading to the data part, they are retained to the certain time, and also they have a appropriate privacy policy matching with the regulatory requirements, and as far as they have right, and they have a proper way of consenting, and terms and conditions are in place. As well as they should be aware that where the data is kept and how it's been is it been securely stored. Or because the thing is, what happened is that if you're not aware where the data storage is, how your data is stored is, you won't be able to comply with the local requirement. Because I might have some application which is storing my data in India or US, but I have no idea. If I don't have any idea about it, I won't be able to take any preventive actions. So that's the key we should be looking at. We should be also looking at whether that application is being patched on time, because as you all might be aware, that one of the key reason is always the patching and missing out on the updates, and then it leads to lots of windows for the hackers to come and hack the systems. At the same time, just like we mentioned from the beginning, that availability is also one of the key responsibility of the third party, because operational impacts is directly impacting the businesses. So we should be aware that whether they'll be able to handle the resiliency part, they are highly available in terms of the outage for any critical applications. uh, we should be looking at whether they are compliant with the local industry requirements. Like, we can see that whether these particular applications are being actually, have been designed as per the FedRAMP, the highest standards, or they should be looking at whether they have got their security systems with their internal and external audits or not. So these are very critical. At the same time, we need to look at the part that the exit strategies in place, because these activities might be disrupted, and you need to understand whether you'll be able to take out this data and start working on some other platform. So you need to keep in mind that you have at least the data which you're uploading, with the data which you're being used, is it can be removed on time, and if there is any disruption, then you can always start using for the sake of some other tools. Now, how can we manage them on a very straightforward, keeping conscious of the time? We need to understand that what exactly the employee is required. Basically, they should be analyzing that how exactly the employees are looking, or the professionals are looking, so that we can start catering to their requirement and making sure that those particular application are approved application or sanctioned application. Because what happen if you are helping the employee to tell them that these particular applications you can use, and then you are actually aware where your data is there, and in case of any uh, diversion, they have to come and take the your approval. So that can help them to understand that the companies can also provide them the good approved application. Training and awareness is the key, because they should be aware of the risk what they are doing it. They should be aware that how exactly they can handle if there is any third party provider they're trying to pick it up. Also, they need to know the privacy policies and deletion policy, and also the agreement part. And the last one is the fast procurement process, because apart from the because we have the slow process, it's better that we can come up with the policies which comes up into in the end and says that this can be fast in the process. And overall, we can say that if you're aware the third party is being used on the SaaS as well, we might have some control towards it. But if you're not aware about it, it becomes a very gray area to understand. So, ending with the key takeaways, it's just that we need to have the end-to-end visibility of the third parties, which is very crucial. Because if you're not aware the way the overall ecosystem and or overall the data flow, we might not able to protect them. We need to identify our security management framework for the applications, so that we are aware that how exactly we can manage them. Of course, the SaaS adoption is the key new posture, but we need to find a way to make sure that it is adopted securely and the users are aware about how exactly the secure adoption occurs. So that's all from my now. Thank you. And if there is any question, please let me know.
Hey, thank you very much, Priya. It was actually wonderful summarization of what exactly it goes when you use your vendors, suppliers, and third-party applications. Considering the whole debate that's going on right now, the supply chain risk mitigation, and this
Yes.
is very much helpful in when somebody who is just stepping into the role of security and compliance person, or somebody who is having assigned a task of approving different vendor applications. I think these are some of the priorities that they should keep in mind. And while doing this, I should also add here that the vendor risk management is very volatile. It's very dynamic, right?
Yeah,
Today you might have approved an application, approved a workflow, but tomorrow they might just do another release and open up some another gate, or
exactly.
open up some new functionality. So it's both application security wise and data security wise is essential to go through the list of changes are coming up in given version, because they might be exposing some data fields that are actually sensitive. It should have been hidden with asterisks, or only the authorized roles should have been given and option to view or download such reports. So I think your presentation was right on the point that what should actually be done. Don't put all the vendors in one bucket, right? As you mentioned, that vendors should be categorized as per what they're offering, what they're bringing on the table, whether they're hosting on-premise your network or they are a SaaS-based vendor. Even in a SaaS-based risk
Yeah,
mitigation, you have to work with the architect team. You have to work maybe with a technical
yeah,
team, not just a sales team who is trying to sell you the stuff and deploy it. Because the people who deploy, who sell, they are the least knowledgeable in terms of what
Sig-
goes on the security side, how their APIs are
yeah,
secured, how their critical
exactly.
configuration keys are encrypted, or what happens in the
Yeah,
transmission. Yeah, so it's I think these are all the things that people should consider. And
yeah,
I understand that with the remote work environment, there is a increased need actually to also audit or manage the SaaS-based service providers, and sometimes you may not even reach able to reach them out. So you
yeah,
have to then do some passive studies about what they're offering. And if it's a big vendor, and you might not even get an meeting with them for next 2 weeks, but you have to start using that app right away, and you have
yeah,
to go by the reviews and by the references of already the customers in your industry domain who are using it.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's true.
and one thing I also saw that right to audit the vendor code. Sometimes because of the proprietary nature of the
Yeah,
application or the technology, that may not be available, but still audit the
yeah.
application.
But I think that was more specific to the traditional one, not
Yes,
like the SaaS. It's not
not
possible
like
with the
that.
SaaS. Yeah. So that's the
Yeah,
reason I had two section, and of course the SaaS one needs to go more deep, keeping conscious its time. And I wanted to make sure that first I need to set up
yeah,
what exactly third party is.
right.
But if we start talking about the SaaS, it's a very extensive
That's extensive.
requirement.
Yeah.
And of course, the key is always with the data, but then how do we secure is every single aspect is very strong and very deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's the reason I just kept it very high level. But yeah,
Right.
right to audit is only for the traditional one, but it's not
Yeah.
possible to get for the subscription base. It's definitely it's just one click away and you just sign a terms and conditions. So
Yeah.
that's thank you for clarifying that
No,
part. Yeah.
no problem, no issue. So we at Rainbow Secure, we have a cyber security defense services where we also actually rope in the resources to help our business client work
Mm-hmm.
with the SaaS vendors and at least get their architecture, evaluate the application at architecture level, how it's gonna interact with your infrastructure, so that you can plan out defenses around them.
Yeah.
So at one of the major healthcare client where we are providing this service, we are evaluating their new SaaS-based offerings that we are onboarding. We are
Yeah.
doing the architectural level study, and then
Yeah.
we do the like some gating on the firewall side, on the backend
Right.
infrastructure. So, but
Yeah.
your presentation is very much helpful. I
Thank
think,
you. I'll
yeah,
look forward to go into the deep dive discussion on microservices and the API security later on.
yes,
But
sure.
Yeah.
yeah, thank
Thank you,
you. Thank you
Priya.
for the opportunity.
This
Yeah.
is
Any
very great.
questions on the panel? Anyone has
Any
is anyone
question?
on the audience want to ask? Let me see if there's any questions, any comments.
I have a question, Priya. If someone
Yeah.
wants to uh, take as a risk management as a career, so
Yeah.
what do you suggest for them?
Uh, I would always suggest that starts with the basics. You need to identify, I based on my understanding how I started and where am I right now. you become actually a very person everyone talking about risk, but it doesn't come in day one. We need to identify from the basics that, if you're just walking, what are the risks coming up. And throughout my journey, I've learned that now, if the new system picks up, you're always thinking about what can be the risk and how can we mitigate it. So I would say that if anyone wants to start the journey, they need to first start looking into themselves. And normally what they do, they need to understand that it's not just the security is around, it's something which we need to adapt in day to day life. Of course, learning and education and training is like everyday process, like every other stream, but we need to read everything every day. It doesn't end in one day. And if we, as of, it's been 7 years, and I think, of course, you guys are more experienced than me, and you guys must will agree the same, that we need to learn every day new things, so that we are, capable to respond to the right thing to the clients and what you're working on. We are strong enough to, be a cyber warrior. So my suggestion is that, of course, just you start reading every day, at least a new thing which we can do it, as well as keep the risk management in your mindset, that whenever you're moving ahead, then you think about the risk and how can we mitigate it. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. That was a great answer. And thank you for your presentation and give your times and
Thank,
efforts.
thank you.
So, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.